Sean, how's it going, sir? Another episode of Ask Me Anything.
It's great. Always great to be here.
Good, man. Well, we got some great questions today, guys, from the Iron Council. We have probably a handful of those questions, and then we got some questions from our Facebook group as well. So we'll be fielding from both locations. If you guys are listening and you haven't joined us on Facebook, please do so. Go to facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And if you're interested in the Iron Council, which is our exclusive brotherhood, that's part of the Order of Man podcast, we will be opening up enrollment on the 15th of March. So you have roughly about a week, and then we're going to open up enrollment. That will be open for roughly a couple weeks, and then it will close until next quarter. So if you're on the fence, take action, join us in the Iron Council, band with like-minded men, hold each other accountable, and ultimately get to a position where you're around individuals that uplift you. And the Iron Council experience is an amazing experience. I joined the ICGs roughly about 6 years ago. I was thrown on Team Alpha with Drew, and within like a couple months, I was immediately like, give me more. I'm bought in. I see the value here. And I went from kind of being a consumer to immediately like, how do I help? How do I serve? Because what we're doing here on Order of Man is really, really important. And the game that we're playing, if you guys don't mind me just expressing this really quick, the game that we're playing is not a game of like building the Iron Council and being around like-minded men. We say that, but the game we're playing is the game of helping men become better men, which means creating positive impact in their families, in their neighborhoods, in their circles of influence, with their employers, etc. That's the game we're playing. And so when guys lead in the Iron Council and their battle team leaders or whatever, that is our focus. Our focus is giving men the tools necessary so they can be self-directed in their growth and make a lasting impact in their circles of influence. And that is critical. And so if you want to band with us, whether it's banding with other men to help rise them up, or you need that circle of influence in your life, join us. You can learn more at orderofman.com/Iron Council. All right, there's the spiel.
Can I
sir.
add to that? Can I add to that?
Of course.
It's obviously didn't plan on this, but as you were speaking, I've been about 3.5 years now as part of the IC and part of this movement. And I started just because I was in a little plateau, kind of I don't want to call it a funk, just a plateau. And had done very well in every part of my life to that point. Just felt like I needed a little nudge, a little push. Came in, got exactly that from the IC, got that nudge, and then moved into the next phase, I guess you could call it, of my life of excelling and growth and those things.
Would you say service? It's kind of rooted in service. Am I wrong?
No, totally right. But it was, and like I said, I was already there. Like between my business and our philanthropic things and all the things we do already, we already had that. It really took it to a next level and gave me that nudge, gave me that different perspective that I needed. But then what it did for me beyond that was I also really bought into the movement and our mission and restoring masculinity and brought that into my business, into our philanthropic things, into the other things that I'm doing. And in a healthy and positive way, to the point where literally all of the men involved in my business, I have a business with thousands of people in it, and all the people that are involved in that business, all of their spouses, all of their wives and girlfriends are giving us accolades for the stuff that we're doing, that I just am staying focused on by being in the IC and wanting to be a part of the mission. And so, I didn't expect that to happen when I joined. I just was looking for that little nudge to kind of get me to the next thing. And now it's something I always want to be a part of. So just want to give a big shout out to that and what you're speaking to.
And we are over 1,000 guys strong. We have guys in the Iron Council that have been there even longer than me. And so we have the reps, right? Like Ryan has put together a great leadership team. So guys are leading from the front. We have multiple mentors, guys who run our Friday calls and et cetera. And so just the caliber of individuals in there are great. And this is one thing I really love about that community too, is I'll give you a perfect example. I was driving down to work on a house over the weekend. And so I made a post in the Iron Council, and I said, hey, yeah, I'm going to be available for the next couple hours or something like that, you know, if anyone wants to have a chat. I got a call and was edified for the next hour and a half with a couple random people that I kind of don't know for all intents and purposes. I don't even know them in the grand scheme of things. And we were edified. Why? Because we're about something. The conversation wasn't BS conversations about, oh, do you see the sports game or anything superficial. The conversation is about important things, about how we show up as men and how do we serve other individuals and how do we show up more powerfully and some of the struggles that we're having in life and how do we serve people better and et cetera, et cetera. It was so great. And I always feel that way. And I've done that a number of times in the Iron Council where I throw my number out and go, hey, give me a call. And I've never regretted it. It's always edifying. And it's because of the kind of the caliber people and the like-mindedness that we're about something. And there's so many guys in this world, and I hate to say it, but like there's so many guys, they're not about anything. They show up in their 9-to-5 job, do bare minimum not to get fired. They do the bare minimum in their marriage not to get a divorce. And they're just going along to get along. And then they sedate themselves constantly whenever they have a chance so they don't have to face their lives. They are not living a life worth living. That is the majority of men, in my opinion. So
I'd agree.
If that's you and you're in the stands watching other people play the game, stop watching us play the game and join us on the court. Last plug, orderofman.com/Iron Council. All right, let's get into it, man. So we got a handful of questions from Iron Council, and then we'll jump into the Facebook, depending on how it goes. So we have some new guys in the IC. When you join, you get added to a group called the Forge, which is appropriately named. And so we got Bill Yu from the Forge. He says, tips on how to deal with my wife getting too invested in her friends. She is positive and almost a bit naive with new people. She believes the best in people and doesn't always see some of their flaws. She also tends to put some of them on pedestals and gets let down when they aren't as invested in the relationship as she is. I love this about her, but she puts a lot of energy into new friends, almost too much. And then I have to counsel her when these friends don't stick around. I've had to do this multiple times and I've tried to help, but I'm just not getting through.
It sounds like her personality type is just going to lend toward that. Yeah, obviously everybody's different. I can't speak to that from personal experience with my wife because she doesn't have that personality. But I know tons of people that I coach that do, and all you can really do is support them each time, right, in my experience. And the thing is especially with that personality type, they don't want to hear what they need to do to fix the situation as much as they just want you to hear them. When it's difficult,
she might be fine being this way. Is ultimately she's probably content, maybe.
Exactly. It probably drives you nuts because you're not that personality, and you watch the effort and what you probably feel is wasted time and that she's putting in, and you probably also feel that she could spend that same time doing something much more productive for you and for her friends and for her family,
or her friends are wronging her. Yeah, or the friends are wronging her because they don't like her as much. So you're standing up for her a little bit. There might be a little bit of that.
Yeah, maybe there's some protection involved there, right? Yep. And you wanted to kind of protect her. She probably needs less of that and more of you just to listen when it happens. And if she asks for advice, that's a different story. Then maybe you give it. But even so, there's a dichotomy there that I would tread lightly and maybe give quick advice and then listen to her side the rest of the time, but I just think in my experience especially with those personality types, and especially in women, they want you to listen when they're going through it.
And how great. I mean, I love what you said, Sean, because what I'm hearing is like, she's fine. She might be fine. And Ben, if you're like kind of wrapped up on like, nah, but it shouldn't be this way. Think about the opposite, man. If she's a complete cynic, doesn't have a relationship with anybody. Every single time you guys meet someone new, she's like, I don't like her because she's probably manipulative, like overly, like, man, there's kind of a sense of like in love and seeing people in a more positive light than they really are. Man, you know what? Maybe we all should be doing that just a little bit more. Now, Ben, if she comes to you and she's like, I keep doing this, and why do I put them on a pedestal and whatever? The only resource that comes to mind, my apologies, is probably the 4 Agreements. I think that book is really great because it does a good job at expressing human behavior in a way where it's not negative town, but it's just awareness around human behavior and how people show up and how it affects us. And that might give her some knowledge and awareness in those relationships. But I totally agree with you, Sean. I think the main thing is like, she might be fine exactly this about this, and you're just trying to change her. And maybe this is a good thing that she's this way a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Any resources for Ben if she's coming asking for like, hey, I keep putting people on pedestal and I get let down and I don't, she's really open to transformation and changing.
And when you said the 4 Agreements, I was trying to think of others that I can think of off the top of my head.
I mean, you go hardcore and go like 48 laws of power, but that's super negative town, but it's still like give her, understanding of human behavior. She just might get depressed after she reads that book. But
that I was thinking more the direction of it, if you want practical, which you may want, but it actually might be helpful, is I was thinking like the 7 habits of highly effective people. And because it takes you out of the emotional aspect of how you want to live your day. And instead of just kind of drifting through, right? If one of those friends calls and she had these things she needed to get done and all of a sudden nothing gets done, and maybe that ends up affecting her health or any of those, those sorts
like
of things.
The relationship's a priority. The relationships are maybe a priority because she's not getting after it in life in other areas. And so you're like, hey, focus on improvement so these relationships aren't as critical. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, there's just so many times in that book where it talks about, being clear in your priorities, because, the relationships are a priority, but maybe they're her 4th or 5th priority. And she needs, to have an understanding or come to a realization that there's, 3 or 4 or 5 other things that are first in line, as those things come up to help her not be as pulled away. From what's more important. That's from his perspective. If he sees it being unhealthy in that way, that might be a good resource there.
Yeah, I like that. All right. Kylan Flynn, this is the question we were talking about earlier before we hit record. How do you make a judgment call between stability and gratitude for what you have versus the concern that you're settling or playing small?
Yeah, this is, I've had a lot of good coaching on this. From Ed Milet, he's talked about this, my whole partnership with him the last 23 years. He calls it blissful dissatisfaction. And it's constantly wanting more, but having gratitude for everything that you have. And for me, I've always been that way anyways. I've been broke and homeless and sleeping in my car, and I've been rich. Like if you've read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about that in his book, how he's been poor and living in a basement with him and his wife, and he's been rich. And if I had to choose between the two, rich is better. Right? But I also was super happy living in my car. But the reason I was happy living in my car is because I knew where I was going. I knew where I was headed, and there was excitement in that. There was thrill in that. There was kind of the thrill of the chase, the thrill of the pursuit. And to be honest, that was some of the most exciting times in my life. And so that's, in the beginning, I talked about joining the IC. That's why I joined the IC, is because I wanted to spark that chase again, spark that thrill, spark that, I didn't need to have more, and I'm not doing it to make more money. Because let's be honest here, as far as money goes, and I see this, I see it in my clients, in my financial business, and I see it in the people I coach, and I see it in my business with the people that I coach, that most people start to coast around $250,000 a year. $250,000. And something that for a lot of people who never get there, or they don't know a lot of people at that level.
Seems weird to for them, they're like, the goal is $250,000 a year.
Yeah. The goal for most people is 6 figures. And but $250,000 is where most people really ease back, because let's face it, at $250,000 a year, like all the real needs that you want and the creature comforts that you could ever hope for, you're addressed at that income level, and they're addressed. And then, beyond that, it really, quite frankly, is extra. And so it's up to you to define, what is necessary or unnecessary. But past $250,000, you really have to push yourself. And if you can't wrap your brain around even kind of making that kind of income, then you might think somebody's crazy for wanting more than that. Or you might think that it's unnecessary, or any number of things that you could say to yourself. And you might also think that it probably isn't that hard to push beyond that, because what problems could you have if you're making a bunch of money, right? Because you have all the financial things out of the way or taken care of. And so I'll be honest with you, it's actually harder. It's harder for me to work harder in my business today after knowing it works, knowing what works, knowing, like, not working on faith, working on pure conviction, right? In the beginning of any business or any venture or anything you're trying to do in life, you're working mostly on faith, and then you work on commitment, beyond faith. And then you do that long enough and you see that it works, you prove to yourself that it works. And only through then can you work on conviction. And once you get to that conviction stage, you would think it'd be easier, because now it works, right? It's kind of like the apostles, right? And doubting Thomas. It's forever in the eternities he's going to be known as doubting Thomas, because he had to see the wounds in Jesus's hands to know the resurrection was true, to know that it happened. He had all of these men that, saw the same miracles as him, testifying to him that he appeared, and he still didn't have the faith to believe them, and he needed to see it. And you would think that after seeing it, he would believe more, but it just doesn't happen that way. It doesn't work that way. And so sometimes you have to push even harder. So the fact that you're even asking this probably speaks to the fact that you're doing something right, that you're finding success, that you've found conviction in some of the things that you're doing. And then now you need to define what that more is. And I'll leave it at this. As I was speaking to like Ed and some of the guys that I know that are very, very wealthy. Some of them like driving around in a Ferrari, and they want a jet, and they, have multiple giant big homes and mansions and stuff all over the place. And that's what they want. That's important to them. It makes them feel good. Not that that's the end in mind, but that's,
Yeah.
it's just something that is, they like and appreciate. You know, for me, I drive a pickup truck. I mean, it's a really nice pickup truck, right? It's a Ford Raptor. It's all decked out. You know,
Those
the
are
thing's
just as
sweet.
expensive as a Lamborghini, man.
Some of them, yeah, and they
No,
can be.
seriously, they are. When
And
I priced mine out, I was like, maybe I should be getting like a sports car, a Ferrari or something, man. This is crazy. Sorry, side bro.
yeah, no, but I mean, and that's the thing, but it's like it fits my lifestyle and all the things I have. Like when we bought our house, I wanted a big barn so I could fill it with muscle cars, and that's going to be
Yeah.
cool for me, you know, but I'm not going to be, it's not something, I'm not super flashy. I'm not, you know, one of those things. It's just not important to me at this point in my life. We have a really nice
Yeah.
house, beautiful property, all these things. But I'll spend tons of money in experiences with my kids, you know, and vacations and doing things and experiencing the world. I put no limit on, you know, the price or cost for those things. And so maybe I'm extravagant in that, right? But that's what's important to me. And so I think you need to figure out what those things are for you, and then use that to fuel your flame and your, you know, for me, it's also complete financial independence. And I want to be able to pass that through the generations and philanthropically and other things. And so building net worth and real wealth and, you know, that pursuit pushes me as well. But I had to dig to find those things, you know, leading back to what I said in the beginning. That's why I joined the IC. So you need to place yourself in environments where you're around people that will push you and that constantly push themselves, that will inspire you to be better and to do more and to have more. You know, and then simultaneously just love every second of what you have, you know, which I've gotten really good at navigating myself.
I like that. I like that. So paraphrase, like, surround yourself around individuals that aren't going to let you play small.
Yeah.
That are inspirational to you. So you're constantly taking action, and in the same breath, pause every so often and just be grateful for what you have and enjoy the journey, and just constantly do those two things is kind of what I'm getting from you, Sean.
Yeah. And you know, the IC it's so helpful for that, for, you know, you plugged it in the beginning. We've both have heavily plugged it, but
sorry.
I mean, sorry, but not sorry. And, you know, I'm trying to navigate how I want to say this without sounding like a dick, but, when I came into the IC and I got on a battle team, and we had our weekly accountability for all the quadrants. And, you know, and I was getting 100% a lot of time, 90s, you know, and things like that most of the time. And I had guys ask me if I was making it too easy or whatever else, but I had been doing that already for 20 years. And so I was already good at it. And honestly, I didn't need the battle team to keep me accountable, you know, where most of them did. And a lot of them were, you know, serving up 20% and 30s and 50s and, you know, missing days, but those were already my habits. So I didn't need the IC for that. But I'm still here, you know, because it's that environment I was talking about. It's people pushing to be better. And then whether somebody has built those habits like I have or not, they're all trying to be better. So that serves me too, because the service you were talking about, I can, if I have any amount of knowledge and experience that can help them in that pursuit, that makes me better too. And so why wouldn't I place myself in that environment? Right. And we're all focused on the same mission, and which is helpful also. Yeah. Again, I hope that didn't come across wrong, and I don't want to sound like a dick. And
what,
you know,
I mean, but that's the evolution, right? The evolution is like, as sometimes you need systems and you need people, but that's not the end game. Let's be really clear there, right? If you can't hold yourself accountable without people constantly around you, you got a problem. Now, until you get there, get that circle of individuals to help hold you accountable. But the idea is that you should be self-directed, right? And in honoring your commitments, agnostic of whether you have people around you to do that or not.
But that's
Dex
almost
Reese.
nobody.
Oh,
That's almost
yep.
nobody, kid, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And
okay
that's,
to acknowledge that. Like you use the word problem. I don't even like that word. I like the word challenge instead of
yeah.
problem, right? Because problem sounds like you're an addict or something like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, which some people are addicted to mediocrity, but it's, you know, it's just a challenge that you have to get to. And some people take 10 years to do it. Some people take it, you know, a few to build those habits, but either way, being in the environment is never going to hurt you.
Yeah.
So.
Got it. All right. Dex Reese, any advice for someone who has become a caretaker for their spouse due to cancer? My wife has been battling breast cancer for over a year, and it's been a taxing season with work and 2 toddlers to raise on top of that. What's the balance of sacrificing and stepping up for the benefit of the family while also being intentional in taking breaks and resting so that burnout doesn't happen? Thank you for your time.
What was his name?
Dex.
Dex, man. This is a hard one. I've done this exact thing, but not with cancer, but with autoimmune disease that my wife had, which was diagnosed as lupus. She chose not to take the drugs and stuff that they recommend because they just mask symptoms and kill other parts of your body. And so she got into studying things, and it was a 2-year brutal route of life change, where I had to step up in every area. And we transitioned from, you know, me hard charging, you know, in our business and every single day in appointments, gone from the house, to being in the house, preparing food, spending 4 or 5 hours a day just in food prep and cooking and other things because of the diet she had to get on. Running kids all over to everything, you know, being there for her emotionally, and physically. We lived in a place at that time where she couldn't literally even walk up and down the stairs sometimes. So I had to carry her up and down the stairs a lot. And it was close to 2 years that we went through that until she was healed and feeling better and overcame it. And man, I can tell you that you're not, I think you need to go in with the mindset that you're not going to get as many breaks as you used to, because we have seasons. And so my advice would be, know that it's going to be really hard. Know that it's going to be more work for you. Know you're going to get less sleep. Know that you're going to have doubts and you're going to be disgruntled about the situation, about her without meaning to. Honestly, you're going to be looking for excuses, and for you're going to be tempted in all sorts of things. So I'm not going to tell you that there's any way to make that easier. It's just going to come at you. But I think it's important to go in with that expectation, and then just remember that you were told it was going to happen, and drive through it and keep your head down when it does. And then also make sure you have somebody to talk to while you're going through it. You know, some other person, somebody you look up to that you can confide in, that you can have conversations, that is going to have your back and her back, and encourage you to carry on. And then when you can take breaks, and give yourself and your body what it needs, do it, but just know it's going to be less. They're going to be few and far between. And I'll be honest with you, when you do them, you're going to feel guilty.
Yeah.
But do them anyways, you know, because you're gonna need it. So, I mean, that's from my personal experience. That's what I had, you know. For you, Kip, what are some thoughts that you have? And
well, I haven't dealt with this, right? So like I have no room to talk. I mean, Asia goes to Hawaii for a week and I'm feeling sorry for myself and I'm pissed off. So I can't imagine stepping into that role for 2 years. I would be horrible. You know what? I just throw money at it. I think I would hire a full staff in the house and then I would try to live life as normal. Don't listen to me, Dax. I have no idea, man. So I think, Dex, you just got the best advice from someone that's actually dealt with this. The only thing that crosses my mind in all seriousness is just those breaks are critical, but it's not, I'd be careful what the break is, like you might be tempted, you might be exhausted and you might go like, I just want to watch TV. No, that's not the answer. That's a workout you need, right? Like this kind of stress, this has jujitsu and workout and running written all over it, right? Like it's that kind of break you need. And I think you'd be better for it. And you're going to be tempted to probably let your health go to the wayside because you're stressed out. Don't do that because that doesn't serve you or her. That's just going to make it worse. So stay healthy. And those breaks probably should be a lot of physical exertion so you can get out your frustration, your anger, and release it on someone else other than your wife and kids.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Mine was surfing. I will also add, I made myself be super positive with her to the point where she kind of hated me for it.
That you were so positive.
I was in a sense that I used to always say it's only temporary. It's only temporary, babe. Like there's a temporary thing. There's greatness on the other side of this challenge. All these dumb little quotes, right? And she'd hate, but it's only temporary. She hated. Like she literally wanted to punch me in the face when I would say it, but I said it anyways, and I kept at it. And when we got through it, it was funny. Like a couple years after that, I remember I got my wisdom teeth pulled and I was on the couch after that happened. If you've had it done, like for a couple of days, I'm literally on the couch, like, can't move.
Yeah.
I'll never forget. Like I was asking her to help me and whatever. And she runs, I'm laying on the couch. She runs over, looks over the edge of the couch and she goes, "It's only temporary." And then leaves, like left the house for the day, went to the office, worked all day, did her thing, left me there to make my own lunch and dinner and whatever. But it was like, I know she was just waiting for that moment to get back at me for that. Yeah. But we've had a lot of conversation where she was really grateful that because we needed that positivity, we needed that outlook. And she needed it as much as she hated to hear it as she was going through it. She is really grateful for it now. So if you can remember that and make yourself
be positive,
that.
Yeah. Got it. Justin Basie, what would you personally recommend in dealing with a narcissist father? If you've exhausted expressing how you feel and there's no change, how do you then move forward with the relationship?
It's hard when it's dad because you feel almost obligated to be around him. But my advice would be just, why are you making yourself be around him then? I mean, why do that to yourself? There's no mention if he's married or kids or anything, right? It's just, no. I mean, toxic people are toxic people, and some of them just happen to have the same DNA as us. And, and so we have to detach our quote unquote obligation as being family to what serves us. And it's, what I was watching a movie the other day. What was it? It was that new Whitney Houston movie, right? And I thought of,
there's a new Whitney Houston movie about her life.
Yeah. About her life. Yeah. It's
with
so
Bobby
good.
Brown?
It's so sad. Right. And you're like,
so
why would
sad.
someone like that, of that caliber,
mess up their life? Yeah.
Stay abused. Right. Like, so why would they do that? It made me think of Tina Turner, right? Like everybody said, like, why would you take that abuse? Why would you keep that in your life? And at the end of the day, that like they made that choice, so it's easy to sit from the outside looking in and say, why would you do it? But there's that emotional attachment and that quote unquote obligation that we attach to it that keeps us there sometimes. Sometimes you just got to cut it out, you know, and work on improving you and improving your life, and accept that, you know what, maybe dad's not going to be a part, even though that's the ideal that we all want.
Yeah.
But maybe dad's not going to be a part of that journey and that growth for you, at least for now.
Yep.
You know, and maybe down the road, you know, here's something that might help with that too, is Kevin Hart wrote a book. It's called I Can't Make This Shit Up. And read that book, because he talks about his dad, and he was detached from his dad for years, and now they have a great relationship, but he's just kind of accepted. His dad was a crackhead and all kinds of, like, you want to talk about narcissist, like he was the extreme.
Crazy. Yeah.
Crazy. But his viewpoint's really good and healthy, but I think it takes reading the book to hear that and understand it. And, you know, he has good experience there, but that's what I would say. What are your thoughts?
All right, Justin, I got some good things for you. So the first is let me read the definition of what a narcissist is, and then we'll level set. Personality qualities that include thinking very highly of oneself, needing admiration, believing others are inferior, and lacking empathy for others. Human. Why would a person be this way? Why do they need high admiration? Why do they pretend to think highly of themselves? Why do they put other people down as being inferior? And why do they lack empathy? Because they're hurting. That's why. They actually don't think they're worth it. And this is a cover-up. Meanwhile, on the flip side, we're placing judgment and removing love and affection for your father because you don't like it. I'm going to call you out. You know what? We are all in different levels of life, right? And if you have someone really toxic and you can't deal with it yet, you need to take care of you. You need to take care of your family. I totally get that. And there's a path there. But when you reach a level of social maturity and emotional maturity, accept people for who they are. Let go of your expectations of way that dad should and should not be, and choose him to love him. Why? Because you choose to. That's it. No excuse, no reason, actually a choice. And stop withholding your love and placing judgment on someone else because they don't show up in the world in a way that you think they should. In fact, better yet, here's the challenge. Justin, reach out to your dad and apologize. Apologize for withholding your love from him and not being affectionate and not being there for him, for making him wrong in regards to how he shows up in the world. And you own your judgment of him, agnostic of whether they change or not.
I'm so glad you said that, Kip, because I didn't mean to detach yourself and stop loving him. I think it's
well, and I'm not projecting on what you said.
No, I know that. I just want it to be clear. Like, you cannot be around someone and still love them. You can choose to detach yourself physically from them and not be around them, but still have that love for them.
Yeah,
that's. I mean, you're with parents. Really, does that ever go away? I mean, look at how many kids love their parents and they get abused their whole life, but you still have a love for those parents. I think it's just a natural, it's a human nature thing, right? So it's I think it's unhealthy to try and detach that.
Totally. And I think, you know, this is unpopular opinion, but it's mine nonetheless. Most people are broken. They're broken. They're hurting. And the last thing that we need is more people placing judgment on us and not loving us. Now, find that balance, right? How do you express that love? How do you do you, right? How do you show up powerfully as a son and honor your dad appropriately without it affecting you in a negative way, right? And that might take some maturity and time and some balance, right? You might be like, hey, I love mom. I love her. I want the best for her, but man, I can't deal, right? Like there's a way she shows up that is very hard for me to deal with. And so what do? I might have to limit, my exposure to mom. Maybe I'm writing letters more often than showing up, and you're going to have to balance that. But one thing's for sure, no one has ever successfully changed someone else by constantly expressing to them what they need to do to change. That's not going to work. So you might as well let go of that expectation, see them for who they are, deal in reality, and then figure out a way that you can show up powerfully, agnostic of how they show up in the world. Okay. Yeah, we're hopping to Facebook, facebook.com/group/orderman. All right. Ryan Young. I've been going to Catholic church in a small town for most of my life. My parents were married there. I was married there. My children have all their sacraments there. About 6 months ago, we've had a new international pastor come in. I've been struggling with understanding him sometimes. I'm not sure if it's like a language thing, and it's taken away from my spiritual experience. A week ago after Mass, he told the congregation that doesn't like the design of our church. I know you know what that means. And people aren't paying enough attention because of it. I was insulted, to say the least, because my grandfather was a big part of rebuilding the church years ago. I'm torn between biting my tongue out of respect for him or telling him man to man how I feel. Just wondering your opinions. Thank you.
Yeah, man, how many times have you heard people talk about leaving a church or being disgruntled because of a person in it?
Totally.
So,
totally.
I mean, this is as long as we've had religion, you've probably had people with this viewpoint.
Because people are imperfect, and you have some moron or whatever that shows up, and then it's like, you throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of mentality. But anyhow.
Yeah. I would, I mean, this could be a good test of your faith, right? Has your faith and your belief in your religion been anchored in the building you're in and the generational aspect of that faith and that religion and how it's been passed down, and the priests that have been preaching to you this whole time? Or is it anchored in Jesus Christ? Is in the gospel, in what's being taught out of the Bible? And I would take it the same way that I take it when I read scriptures. When I read scriptures, I'm not like one of those guys who, makes a goal. As a matter of fact, I've made the goal to read the Bible, in a year, the Old Testament or the New Testament. I read it and read it all the way through, and I've never done it. I've never done it. Because what happens with me, the way I read, is as I start reading, I capture a verse.
Yeah.
And then I learn a ton from that verse, and then I get into a tangent and build on that, because I don't want to lose that. And so I would say, instead of struggling with the whole sermon, try and find those bits and pieces that you can build on and
focus on your faith and your testimony.
Focus on that. Yeah.
I like that.
Beyond that, that's beyond that, I think that's the best advice I could give.
Yeah.
For that situation.
And I totally agree. I mean, I think you focus on the right thing, the important thing. Now you might be like, man, this guy's pissing me off though, right? It's still annoying. Well, get centered, right? I doubt he showed up to piss you off and to ruin the church.
Mm-hmm.
So back up and go, okay, well, what's this guy's intent? Do you think his intent is rooted in doing a good job and reaching out to people? Yes or no? And the probability is yes. Now, you may not agree with it, but you are both aligned probably on the same idea that what he wants to do, he should be doing it an effective way that reaches out to people. And guess what? You might be wrong. Maybe he's right. You don't like it. but maybe 80% of everybody else, if he changes it, might be more effective. Who knows? You don't know that, just like he doesn't know it. So once again, stop. He's not necessarily wrong. He's trying to figure stuff out. He's probably noticed the same thing that you noticed, that you're checked out a little bit and that you're not engaged as much. And he's thinking it's probably something else. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but he's trying. At least he's trying to make it better. And so do him a solid. And there's no, I'm going to man up and talk to him how I feel. No, what, you're going to lash out on him in regards to how you emotionally feel that's not rooted in truth? No, don't do that. I'm going to talk to him and help him. Freaking help him. Hey, since you've come, I've withdrawn a little bit. These are how can I help you? Is that the point of this whole thing anyway? Is your church to be able to open your arms and serve more people? Then help him instead of making him wrong. Now, I'm just on this kick of like, don't judge people today. Sorry. All right, Jeffrey Young. How do you deal with fighting and picking and bickering between your kids, especially in public settings? Nothing we try seems to stop it and calm it. Punch it. I'm just joking. All right, go.
This is my wife and my biggest thorn in our side, but especially right now, we have 3 teenagers in our house. And oh man, this happened last night, and this wasn't in public. This is in our house, but our bishop and his wife stopped by to say hi. We have a new bishop in our ward. And so he's, he's
someone that you kind of care how your kids show up. Let's just lay that groundwork, right? So,
and my wife way more than me.
Yep.
And so he's, you almost want to impress him, right? Like, hey, this is our family. And thank goodness I stopped caring as much a long time ago. And here's the thing, like our kids were pinching each other, kicking each other, hitting, our 7-year-old was throwing things, and they were, but simultaneously, like they weren't trying to hurt each other. They were messing around. Annoying. Short attention spans, right? And and so this has taken a lot for me to overcome to get to the point where I could just blow it up and laugh at it and actually point out a couple of the things as they were happening. And our bishop laughed with us. I even got my wife to laugh with us a couple of times, with things that they did. That in the past, for me, like my personality is there's a right and there's a wrong. And if you're not doing right, you're doing wrong. And that needs to be fixed. Yeah. Right. So this is, as I'm saying, this is super hard for me. And I've been working for a long, long time to get to the point where I didn't lash out at them or whatever. There was, and by the way, not that I would do it in front of them, but in the past, after they left our house, if that was happening, all those kids have been reprimanded. Well, retaliation is a good word.
Retaliate. Yep.
That would have happened, and that didn't happen. It was just like, hey, I know you were restless. Next time, can you just be a little more aware? But that was, it wasn't much more than that. It was like, okay, now we're going to do this as a family, like, kind of carry on. And what I found is, as it bothered my wife and I less, our family's happier. But when we were deep rooted in like, this is the way you have to be. And here's the thing that makes it even harder. Like, we go to church and then you see the family that has like the 6 kids with perfectly braided hair and
all
perfect
still.
All the entire time. They don't make a peep during church. And our kids are like hitting each other, throwing things, like throwing papers, like, making noise, talking to, like, come on, guys, can you just, and they're all disheveled. Everything's last minute. They're, not that their shirts are wrinkled. You told them 10 times the night before to get their church stuff out and ready, and last minute they're still looking for their stuff the morning of. And, just we can't control our kids' personalities, right? And I think that we're given kids to strengthen the areas you need help in a lot of times, right? So I think you need to work less on improving their behavior and work more in how you react to it. And I can tell you this, we
because it might perpetuate it, right, Sean? Wouldn't you say
that's what was
like
happening?
It perpetuates the bad behavior by you overreacting.
But when we were overreacting, it was getting worse. And I can tell you, when we showed up more loving, more understanding, talked to why they did it in those circumstances, and talk to them about it afterwards in a loving conversation, it has improved. And hopefully it will continue to. But when we overreacted, and I can tell you that's how I grew up. When I did something wrong, when I did something inappropriate in public and stuff like, I'd get smacked and hit like out of nowhere, like by things and like, seemingly out of nowhere, and then growing up, I understood now why my mom did that or my grandma or whoever I was with. And so I've internalized that as, oh, well, I guess that's what you're supposed to do when your kid does this.
Yeah.
So I've had to
kind of yeah. I mean, it almost ends up being like kind of built into you, huh?
Oh, it's
like,
totally.
You're
built.
like,
I mean,
you're like, oh, I
the genetic thing I talked about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary, actually. A little demon.
First reaction is I go straight there. That I get angry. I get, my level goes from like 0 to 100 in a half a second, and I wanna pounce, and I have to stop myself and breathe and think through it, and
All right, Chris Eglett, as a fellow member of the church, I'm curious about
wait. What was it? Because you have some adult kids too, and you have kids in the home. What have you seen? I want to hear your standpoint.
No, I agree with you on. Yeah, I agree with you on most of that. I think Asia's better at this than I am. She's the one that's just like, oh, they're fine, and I'm like, right? Like unacceptable, right? That's my default mentality. I've gotten a lot more lax than I have been. So I think us not overreacting, chilling the crap out in regards to like controlling them on everything they do. And then the only other thing that on this question is, and I thought it was profound. Jordan Peterson talks about this, how be careful as a parent. Don't, like, if something really bothers you, don't let it go unaddressed. I'm not saying that you lash out, but don't let it go unaddressed, because as parents, we will retaliate just the same. And be mindful of that. We will withhold love. We will withhold affection. We will not be proud of them. We'll be embarrassed of them. We are horrible. Humans are mean. And even if you're a parent, you will get justice. And so be mindful of that, and don't pretend like, oh, I'm just okay with it. And then when you get home, you have a heart at war towards your kids, right? Like that's a problem, right? You still need to address it. So don't let it go unaddressed. But in the same token, like for me, I need to just downplay it way more, and realize like my youth is not my kids, right? And Asia reminds me of that on a regular basis, of like, your boys aren't you, Kip. Because I'm like, my racket right now is in regards to what they're doing with their lives right now. And they're like 21 and 19, and I'm annoyed, right? When I was 21, I was, you know what I mean? And she's like, they're not you. Like, stop projecting on them, and I need to be okay with where they're at.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, with your, and for lack of a better word, you have like your first batch and your second batch of kids. Do you see that it's easier with the stuff he's talking about, with them being younger and, kind of being in public and being inappropriate? Do you find that easier with your second batch of kids than it was with your first?
Our batch 2 is like, they're freaking saints.
Oh, really?
And ironic. Yeah. They're saints. They're wonderful kids. They're well-behaved, but here's the irony. We've tried to control them less than we controlled the first batch. It goes
That's what
back
I was
to
going to
your point.
ask. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes back to your point. I think our constraints on them and not letting them have their individuality and understanding their personalities or whatever is what almost caused the lash outs. It's crazy.
Yeah. I just had this thought as you said that. Do we do it because we want it done right, or we're concerned with all these other people in the public setting we're in are thinking about us as a family, right?
Totally.
So I think that's something to consider as well.
And your kids feel that.
Yeah.
They feel that, oh, this isn't about me. This doesn't feel like love. They're just concerned about what the neighbors think. I just make them look bad. They're concerned about how they look. They know. They may not be able to put language to it, but we know what it feels like not to be seen and heard by someone. And when we make our kids objects, that's what we do. We make them a problem.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, Chris Eglett, as a fellow member of the church, I'm curious about your stance on the whole mask thing during COVID. I took some issues with it myself. I think, obviously Chris is talking about the LDS church, but I think we could probably say that this is probably consistent across the board, right? So let me set that up. So Chris, ultimately, were you guys annoyed that religious organizations and my particular religious organization had mask mandates and those kind of things during COVID? And did we take an issue with it?
It's for me. I was in California. So California was
other bag.
Yeah. I don't know where Chris was, or is, but I was in California. So it was that way no matter where you went, right? We had to deal with that. And we were, as we started to look in other places around the country, it's nice to not wear them. But I mean, it's what I think we already addressed this in the conversation about the guy talking about his Catholic church, that, what is decided in your church doesn't change your faith. It doesn't change the gospel,
or it shouldn't,
or it shouldn't. Right. And so the mask thing for me was and we had guys in there, like Ryan speaks to this, right? He would go to church without his mask just because he's, to prove a point. And, honestly, it wasn't that important to me, to prove that point, to take that stance. I mean, I can, in the LDS church, like they've also encouraged the vaccines too, right? They've done that too. And so like my family's not vaccinated, but big deal. It's not going to stop me from going to church. Right. I don't think they're all idiots for that. And so the mask thing was just what it was. I knew it was a season. It
was what it was. Yeah.
But it wasn't a big enough deal to discourage me in my faith. And so I think that was the more important thing for me. Kind of like we talked about laying out your priorities, right? When the guy was talking about his wife, like, spending too much time with their friends. I think we can spend too much time focusing on little things when we've got 4 or 5 or 6 other more important things that we need to focus on. I think the same goes for how we show up to church. That's my viewpoint, right? Which, dude, I think Ryan, I wish Ryan was here to answer that one, because his viewpoint would probably be a little different. But that's mine.
No, I love your viewpoint. In fact, I think that's a good call out for me, right? Because, it's real easy, right, for us to, it's easier for us to make wrong than understand, right? And we're all walking around executing on the information that we've regurgitated, right? Like, let's be frank, right? Everyone has an opinion about, let's say, a vaccine, for instance, based upon what? Have you gone to a clinical lab? You understand the science of it, and based upon all your intellectual understanding of the COVID, you've made a decision? No, you've read something, you regurgitated it, you took it as truth, and you applied it. Well, guess what? The other person that has the other opinion on the flip side of that coin did the same exact thing. And that's all that we're doing, is we are researching sources that are self-fulfilling prophecies in most cases, and we're coming to conclusions on information that we got from somewhere else. And so now I could still have a strong opinion. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a strong opinion. I have mine, but I need to be a little bit slower to understand that people that see this differently or see things differently, based upon the information they're consuming, based upon their circles of influence, human behavior wise, it makes sense. Or I could even be even more emotionally and socially aware and realize that some of this is what? Fear and concern and social pressures. You don't think that, and that's the other thing I love about this is it, and I'm the anti-mask, anti-vax guy, right? By the way, I just want to be really clear, because this makes more sense, or it's actually even quite funny, or coming from that stance, that people that are anti-mask, let's say back in the day, and they're like, oh, they're just doing it for social pressure. You don't think you do stuff for social pressure? The clothes you wore today is all about looking good. It's about what people think. The way we talk, you know, your voice is not even your voice. Did you know that? The last time that your natural voice was used is like roughly when you're back, like I think around 5 and 7 years old. Your voice, Sean, is what you have created based upon people in your life over the years. So everyone's so quick to go like, oh, well, they're just social signaling. Yeah, we social signal like there's no tomorrow. Part of my anti-opinion is part of my social signaling. So understanding human behavior, and I think it's just powerful to do that. And I disagreed, of course. I was kind of like, nah, this is stupid. And I'll be honest, you know, I didn't like the idea that it prevented or stopped people from wanting to attend church, and it affected things. But here's the sad part. Why did it affect people's testimonies and their church attendance? It goes back to what you said, Sean, because it was weak before, because they were going because of the social pressures, because they were going because of what people thought. They weren't there for the gospel and for strong religious reasons. They're there for other reasons. And to be honest with you, it kind of cleaned house a little bit in regards to those with stronger testimonies. I know that's sad to say, but it's true. And I know we're on different paths, so I'm not placing judgment on those people that struggled, but they could also use it as ammunition going, geez, look, we are willing to give up our religious beliefs and our testimonies because we disagreed with something so minute, you know, and maybe it should be a sign to them that they need to strengthen those, or strengthen in those areas.
Yeah. I mean, and it, like, we've been so influenced by the media in all of this. And
Crazy.
like, it bothers me every time the subject comes up. It just bothers me because we keep perpetuating the subject, right? Like that's, and when we can decide that it doesn't matter and kind of to each his own, cool. Now the mandates and that stuff, I didn't agree with that either. I was anti that. It's just like you said, you know, but it's, you know, the church took a stand. And by the way, like that wasn't a mandate by the church. They didn't kick you out if you didn't wear a mask.
Yeah,
like you still
I never wore a
that
mask.
choice.
People looked at me weird, but yeah.
I mean, one of my best friends, we go hunting all the time. He never wore a mask the whole time. He's like, screw this, I'm not, you know, and he was always pissed off about it. But I'm like, dude, look at you getting so angry. I'd kind of make fun of him, you know, a little bit. And he's like, look at you with your stupid mask on, right? And so like we were able to still hang out and have a good time and be best friends and go hunt and like do all these things together still. It never was a polarizing subject for us as friends and in our relationship. And so like, why would I let that affect my relationship with the church? Why would I let that affect my relationship with the other people who made their choices? You know, instead I respect why they did it, where they're coming from, and carry on.
Totally. Well, and this next question is actually perfect because it's right in line with this conversation. So it's from Chris Arnold. He says, how do we tackle cognitive dissonance with the world so convinced that their side is the right and that it's seemingly moral imperative to convince others' side to either believe what I believe or acknowledge their ignorance? How do we get back to agreeing and disagreeing at the civility that a mature man should have?
You show up in service. to
rise above it,
your
right?
fellow,
The
yeah, to
differences.
your fellow humans. I mean, you do your thing and you prove it. The only way I could explain it is prove it. Whatever your stance is, prove it. There's too many people talking. There's too many people saying too many things. There's too many people. Like, I mean, it's so crazy.
Everyone has an opinion, but no one's doing it. Yeah.
No one's doing anything about it. They're just, you get all these, right? Like the social justice warriors and the what do they call them? The keyboard warriors or whatever it is that, you know, and 99% of those people act a different way when you're in front of them face to face. And if they don't, and they try and prove their point, like, honestly, for me personally, I don't have time to listen to them because I'm too busy doing stuff. So it doesn't really bother me. I can just show up to my best capability in my community and in my circle of influence, and especially for the people that I have stewardship over. And then people can take notice on that, right? By my fruits. And so by your fruits, ye shall be known, right? And so I focus more on that, and that keeps me happier. It keeps me more productive. I don't get pulled into the polarization of all the stuff that's out there as much, because of it. And I'll leave with this thought on that. And I was in, where was I? Austin. I went out there for stem cell treatments, and I left the airport, and there was an elderly couple on the side of the road. They had gotten a flat tire, and so I saw it when it happened, knew what happened, pulled over, and I was in the middle of a call with a group of, I think I was on a call with like 80 people, and I was leading this call. And I pull over on the side of the road, ask them if they need help, and told the people I'm on the call with, like, hey, look, there's these people need my help. Someone else start running the call. You know, I'm going to go help these people. And I went and I changed their tire, and I was talking to them, and these older people, and they were in Texas. So I just assumed they were going to have the same kind of conservative beliefs that I had. You know, I started talking about hunting and other things with the husband, because they like grew up on a farm and all this stuff. I found out like that the wife had very different viewpoints, you know, from me on things. And but she was like really softened by my willingness to help them out, you know, and she was really appreciative. And she said something to the effect of, you know, like I hear so many people give people like you, is what she said, you know, a bad rap, but no one else stopped to help us today, you know. And she's like, I appreciate it, you know. And you know, and then the husband was like, man, what did he say? He's like, you saved our bacon. You know, he's like, and they were just so appreciative. So it was like that, who knows how that'll trickle into what they teach their kids and their grandkids and how they talk about people and whatever. It might make a difference, it might not, but all I can do is show up in service to my fellow humans around me, right? And that will make the biggest difference, I think, less than
I love that.
The conversations we're having.
Well, it's like, what's the Carnegie quote, right? No one cares how much you say until they know how much you care. And it's
nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah. And I think it's profound. One of my favorite compliments I've ever gotten. So I have family members on Asia's side that see the political landscape drastically different than I do.
We all do. I mean, we should probably,
but pretty extreme, right? Where I'm kind of like, yeah, you know, I'm not walking around trying to prove myself to anybody. Now, if we do have some conversations, but guess what I'm doing? I'm actually seeking to understand. That's it. No one needs to know my opinion. Now, if they ask for it, I'll share it. But I'm fully content asking for your opinion, Sean, on something that I disagree with, to understand you, to actually like truly understand. And I can walk away. I don't need to go, well, yeah, but I feel like, I just listen. And years ago, I didn't even remember what it was, but one of these family members, it's actually like a cousin of a family member kind of thing. And he made some posts and I replied, and his circle lashed out on me. They just started like attacking me. And I loved it because Ken like left a comment and he's like, hey, no, you guys don't know Kip. He's a solid guy. He's actually just seeking to understand and blah, blah, blah. And he stood up for my character because of my relationship with him. That was made possible, back to your point, right? Because he knew I cared for him as a person. And it's amazing what just charity can fix. And allow us to disagree. But when we have charity that's available there, then our hearts are softened, right? And we see people as people, as humans, not as objects and problems.
Yeah. Well, and he knows you well enough to know what you do, right?
Yeah.
Not just what you say.
What I say. Yeah. I like that. All right, man. I think that's a good place to stop if you're okay with that.
Yeah. Perfect.
All right, gentlemen. Call to action. We chatted about him a couple times. So Iron Council opening up in roughly about a week. That's orderofman.com/Iron Council to join us there. If you haven't joined us on Facebook, go to facebook.com/group/orderofman. And as always, to connect with Mr. Michler on Instagram or Twitter, that's at Ryan Michler. That's MICHLER. Sean, thank you, man. It's always edifying. I say it all the time, but there's such huge power in the conversation. And it's I'm just glad I'm surrounded by guys like you, that I can have these kind of conversations and just be better just by working through things that are important. So thank you guys for even submitting questions to allow us to have this conversation. We certainly appreciate it. Sean, any closing comments?
No, likewise. Appreciate you. Appreciate the guys. Appreciate their willingness to learn and grow and help us further the mission that we have with Order of Man. Have a great week.
All right. Until Friday, take action and become the men that you were meant to be.